The giant black wolf could have killed everyone in Liora Vale's workshop. Instead, he walked straight to her scissors. Customers screamed and fled into the rain. A bolt of blue silk hit the floor. Liora barely noticed it. Her attention was fixed on the silver collar buried beneath the wolf's black fur. The metal was too tight. Where it touched him, smoke curled upward. The wolf's legs trembled. Yet when Liora reached toward his throat, he did not snap. He lowered his head, trusting her with the place that hurt most. Liora's fingers closed around her smallest scissors. Outside, bells began ringing from the royal quarter. 3 slow peals. The warning used before a crown accord. 3 days until the vote. And somewhere beyond her shuttered windows, men were shouting that a dangerous royal wolf had escaped. Where are you listening from tonight? Tell me in the comments so I know how far this strange night has traveled. Stay with Liora, because before morning, the creature beneath her scissors will turn everything she believes about fear, power, and her own worth upside down. Easy? She whispered. The wolf's steel-gray eyes stayed on hers. Liora slid one blade beneath the collar. The scissors struck silver. Clink. She frowned. The collar looked like a single band, but through the handle she had felt 2 impacts. Metal, then something underneath it. A second layer that should not exist. The wolf shuddered. I know. I'm trying. Footsteps thundered outside. Search every shop. The wolf's pupils widened. His body tensed. Liora should have backed away. Instead, she placed her free hand on the floor where he could see it. I'm not holding you here. The wolf looked toward the back door. He could run. He could break through the wall if he wanted. Instead, he lowered himself until his throat rested within reach of her scissors. Liora swallowed. All right. She searched the silver again. This time, the blades found a hair-thin weakness. Something inside the collar gave a faint, impossible pulse. The wolf went perfectly still, and Liora understood one terrifying thing. Someone had not simply locked this collar around him. They had put something alive inside the silver. A red seam of light flashed beneath her blade, then vanished. Liora stared at the place where it had been. Ordinary silver did not breathe. Ordinary collars did not hide from scissors. This one had just done both. Liora worked on the silver collar until her fingers went numb. The rain stopped sometime after midnight. She noticed only because the hammering against the workshop windows disappeared, leaving every other sound painfully clear. The scrape of scissors against silver, the black wolf's breathing, the occasional footsteps of guards passing along the street outside, and beneath all of it, a pulse. Liora sat cross-legged on the floor beside the enormous wolf. She had tried every tool she owned: dressmaker's shears, embroidery scissors, a leather knife, 2 awls, even the tiny cutting pliers she used for decorative wire. Nothing worked. The silver was not thick. That was the problem. It behaved as though it were. Every time Liora slipped a blade beneath the collar, she felt 2 layers. The first was metal. The second moved. Not physically. Something inside the silver shifted away from the blade, as though the collar understood what she was attempting. This would be easier if you could explain what happened. The wolf opened one steel-gray eye. Liora sighed. Yes, very helpful. She reached toward his throat. The wolf tensed. Her hand stopped instantly. All right. She withdrew. We wait. His eye opened again. Liora pointed at him. Don't look surprised. I'm not cutting anything while you're frightened enough to bite through my wrist. The wolf's ears lowered. I didn't say you would. His gaze remained on her. Liora realized she was reassuring him, a creature large enough to put its paws on her shoulders without standing fully upright, a black wolf that half of Grayhaven was apparently searching for. She should have been terrified. She was, but fear looked different when the frightening thing was afraid too. Liora waited. Eventually, the wolf lowered his head. Not all the way, an inch. Permission. She moved closer, slowly. Tell me if I hurt you. His ears twitched. Yes, I realized the communication problem. She touched the collar. Heat immediately entered her fingertips. Liora flinched. The wolf did not. That told her enough. If the metal hurt her after 1 second, she could not imagine what it was doing to him. She picked up the smallest scissors again. They had belonged to her mother. Plain handles, short blades, too delicate for metal. Yet they were the only scissors that had found the strange weakness inside the collar. Liora slipped one blade beneath the silver. Clink first layer. Then, clink, second. There you are. A red line appeared beneath the blade. The wolf's claws dug into the floorboards. Liora froze. The red line disappeared. Interesting. She changed the angle. Nothing. Again. Nothing. Liora frowned. She understood cloth. More importantly, she understood mistakes. When a seam refused to lie flat, pulling harder rarely solved it. You found where the tension began. She stopped treating the collar like metal. Instead, she treated it like a badly constructed garment. Her fingers traveled around the band. One section pulled tighter. Another carried the strain. A third looked perfectly smooth. Too smooth. Liora pressed there. The red line flashed. The wolf jerked. Pain shot through Leora's own throat. She gasped and pulled away. For one impossible second, she felt the collar around her neck. Hot, tight, choking. Then the sensation vanished. Liora touched her bare throat. What was that? The wolf stared at her. She looked at the silver. Whatever lived inside it had noticed her. Outside, a voice shouted, "Royal Guard, open for inspection." The wolf surged upright. Liora stumbled backward. A growl rolled through the workshop. Not at her, at the door, but the sound was enough. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The wolf heard it. He looked at Liora, then did something she did not expect. He backed away from the door, one step, another, until his massive body pressed against the wall. His growl stopped. Liora stared. He had been ready to fight. Then he had seen her fear and chosen distance. Someone hammered on the door. Open, Liora looked at the wolf. Blood had begun seeping beneath the silver again. If guards found him like this, perhaps they would help. Or perhaps they were the reason he wore the collar. She remembered the voices outside earlier. Dangerous royal wolf. Not injured, not escaped prisoner. Dangerous. Liora made her choice, under the table. The wolf looked at her sewing table. It was absurd. He was enormous. Just try. He moved. Half his body disappeared beneath it. The rest very much did not. Liora stared. That is terrible. The wolf gave her a look. Fine, stay. She threw several lengths of unfinished fabric over the side, then opened the front door. 3 guards stood outside. Not royal guard. Their uniforms were silver gray with black trim. Council security. The man at the front looked past her. We're searching for an escaped shifter. My customers already told me. Black wolf, so I heard. Extremely dangerous. Liora leaned against the doorframe. Then why are you sending 3 men into small shops after him? The guard's expression hardened. May we search? No. His hand moved towards his sword. Liora smiled politely. If you're asking, the answer can be no. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then bells rang again from the royal quarter. The guard glanced toward the palace. 3 days until Crown Accord and everyone suddenly remembers their rights. Convenient timing. His eyes narrowed. Then he stepped back. If you see the animal, report it. Of course. Liora closed the door, locked it, turned. 2 steel-gray eyes watched her from beneath several yards of expensive blue silk. You owe me for that. The wolf crawled out. A bolt of fabric remained draped over his back. Despite herself, Liora laughed. The wolf looked deeply offended. It was the first time she stopped thinking of him as dangerous. That realization came later. Near dawn, Liora found the seam. Not a crack, not a lock. A stitch. She could not see it normally. But when she held her mother's scissors at exactly the right angle, a thin, red-silver line appeared inside the collar. It crossed over itself, looped, tightened, like thread. Oh, Liora forgot exhaustion. You're sewn shut. The wolf watched her. She touched the line with the scissors. Pain wrapped around her throat again. This time she did not pull away. The sensation intensified. Someone tightening metal, a command she could not hear. The desperate instinct to obey because resistance meant pain. Liora's vision blurred. These were not her feelings. They belonged to the enchantment, or to him. She looked into the wolf's eyes. Someone wanted you to learn that fighting hurts. His entire body went still. That was answer enough. Something cold entered Liora's chest. She had spent her life making clothing for people who barely remembered her name. She knew what it was to be overlooked, but this was different. Someone had taken a living creature powerful enough to terrify a city and turned pain into a leash. Liora placed the scissors against the glowing seam. I'm cutting it. The wolf's breathing quickened. If you want me to stop, move away. He remained. All right. She cut. Agony exploded around her throat. Liora cried out. The wolf roared. Silver light flooded the workshop. The collar tightened. For one horrifying second, Liora thought she had made a fatal mistake. Then the tiny scissors moved another fraction. Snip. The glowing stitch broke. The entire collar sprang open. It struck the floor. The wolf collapsed. Liora dropped the scissors. Jida. She stopped. A name had almost entered her mind. She did not know why. The wolf lay motionless. Liora crawled toward him. No. No, no, no. His chest moved. Barely. She touched the fur beside his face. Steel gray eyes opened. The pressure inside Liora's chest changed. Warmth moved through her. Recognition without memory. Home without reason. The wolf seemed to feel it too. His eyes widened. Then he pushed himself upright. The back door stood only a few feet away. Liora opened it. Cold dawn air entered. Go. The wolf looked at her. Whatever those men want, they aren't getting another chance to put that thing on you. She nodded toward the forest beyond Grayhaven. You're free. The wolf looked outside, then at the broken collar, then at Liora. He stepped toward the door. Liora felt something inside her tighten. Ridiculous. Of course he should leave. She had helped him because he needed help. That was what people did. They came when something was torn. She fixed it. They left. Liora knew that pattern well. The wolf reached the threshold, stopped, then turned around. He walked past Liora, crossed the workshop, and crawled beneath her sewing table. Liora stared. You know you don't need me anymore. The wolf lowered his head onto his paws. Stayed. Something inside her hurt in a way the collar had not caused. The royal soldiers arrived an hour later, real royal guard this time. Liora knew from the dark green cloaks and golden crown wolf insignia. Their captain entered first. He saw the broken silver collar, then the black wolf beneath the sewing table. Every trace of color left his face. He dropped to one knee. 6 guards followed. Liora looked from them to the wolf. The captain bowed his head. Majesty silence. Liora slowly turned. The wolf closed his eyes. No. His ears lowered. She pointed at him. No. The captain looked confused. Liora stared at the animal beneath her table. The Alpha King? The captain stood. King Gideon Rourke. Liora looked at the blue silk still tangled around one of Gideon's paws. The ruler of Alaris. The Alpha King whose portrait hung in every government hall. The man whose absence could destabilize the crown accord. Had spent the night underneath her sewing table. You could have mentioned that. Gideon looked at her. Liora rubbed both hands over her face. Right. Wolf. The captain noticed the collar. His expression changed. Where did you get that? It was around his neck. You removed it? Eventually. The captain stepped toward Gideon. The wolf recoiled. A growl filled the room. Everyone froze. Majesty? Gideon's eyes flashed. Red silver light appeared beneath the fur around his throat. Liora's stomach dropped. The collar was gone. The enchantment was not. A guard reached for a chain. Gideon snarled. No chains, Liora said. Miss, I said no chains. He may be unstable. Then perhaps don't wave the thing that resembles what someone just tortured him with. The captain hesitated. A sealed message arrived from outside. He broke it. Read, his jaw tightened. Chancellor Cassian Vare orders His Majesty return to the palace immediately. Fine, the captain continued. By restraint if necessary. The wolf's growl deepened. Liora felt heat gather around her throat. On the sewing table, an old spool of silver thread rolled from her mother's wooden box. It should have been cold. Instead, it glowed beneath her fingers. Behind it hung the faded tapestry Liora had inherited with the workshop. A woman holding scissors, a wolf before her, a broken silver circle falling from its neck. Liora had looked at that image thousands of times. For the first time, she wondered whether it depicted a seamstress at all. The captain stepped toward Gideon. The wolf retreated farther beneath the sewing table, toward Liora. Not the soldiers, not the palace healers waiting outside. Her Liora picked up her mother's scissors. Nobody restrains him. The captain stared at her. Do you understand who you're speaking for? Liora looked down at the Alpha King hiding beneath her table. No. She tightened her grip on the scissors. But I understand what that caller did when someone else decided his choices didn't matter. The silver thread in her mother's box became hot enough to glow, and beneath Gideon's black fur, the broken enchantment answered. King Gideon Rourke refused to shift until every chain had been removed from Liora's workshop, not merely hidden, removed. The royal guard carried them outside one by one. Only then did the enormous black wolf crawl out from beneath her sewing table. Liora stood beside the workbench, arms folded. Anything else? Captain Rowan Hale looked exhausted. His Majesty's physicians need to examine him. That wasn't my question. Rowan glanced toward Gideon. The wolf stared at the leather medical case near the door. His ears flattened. Liora noticed. What's inside? Standard instruments. Silver? The physician hesitated. Some. Take them outside. Miss Vale, I have treated the royal family for 23 years, and I've known him since yesterday. The physician looked offended. Liora pointed toward Gideon. Yet somehow, I'm the one noticing he's terrified of your bag. Silence. The physician looked at the wolf again. This time, he saw it. The medical case disappeared outside. Gideon's shoulders relaxed, only slightly, but Liora saw. She was beginning to understand that almost everything about him happened in small movements. The king might be enormous. His trust was measured in inches. All right, she said. Now you can ask him. The physician blinked. Ask? If you can examine him. He's the patient. Yes. Liora waited. The physician looked deeply unhappy about receiving lessons in bedside manner from a seamstress. Your Majesty, may I approach? Gideon looked at Liora. Don't look at me. His steel-gray eyes remained on her. Your decision. Several seconds passed. Then Gideon lowered his head. The physician approached. 1 step, 2. His hand came within a foot of Gideon's throat. Red silver light flashed beneath the black fur. Gideon exploded backward. A table overturned. Someone shouted. The physician stumbled. Royal guards reached for weapons. Liora saw Gideon's pupils disappear beneath silver. Power slammed through the room. Kneel. The word was never spoken. Yet every shifter in the workshop dropped. Captain Rowan hit one knee. 2 guards collapsed completely. The physician gasped. Liora remained standing, not because the power had spared her. She felt it, a terrible pressure demanding surrender. Her mother's scissors vibrated on the table, and around Gideon's throat, the residual mark blazed. Gideon. His head snapped toward her. The pressure intensified. Liora's knees weakened. She gripped the table. Look at me, the Alpha King's teeth showed. For one heartbeat, fear told her to run. Then she saw what lived behind the aggression. Panic. Exactly as she had seen beneath the collar. You aren't wearing it. His breathing came hard. The collar is gone. Red light pulsed. You are in my workshop. Another pulse. Nobody is touching you. Gideon's eyes slowly returned to gray. The supernatural pressure vanished. Guards inhaled around the room. Liora looked at the glowing mark beneath his fur, then at the men who had been forced to kneel. Understanding arrived. "Oh," Captain Rowan rose. "What?" The curse reacted when he used his power. His Majesty didn't intentionally, I know. Liora picked up her mother's scissors. The collar wasn't only restraining him. She looked at Gideon. It was waiting for him to fight. Gideon shifted behind a folding screen. Liora absolutely refused to pretend this was normal. Bones changed. Fur withdrew. A man's voice cursed quietly. Then Captain Rowan passed clothing behind the screen. Several minutes later, Alpha King Gideon Rourke stepped out. Liora forgot the sentence she had prepared. That irritated her. He was tall, unreasonably tall, broad-shouldered, black-haired, and visibly exhausted. A thin scar crossed near his jaw. Red silver markings circled his throat where the collar had been. But it was his eyes that made the wolf impossible to forget. Steel gray, watching her. "Liora Vale," he said. She recovered. "So you did know my name." His mouth almost moved. "You said it to 3 customers yesterday. You understood everything?" "Yes, everything." Unfortunately, she remembered calling him oversized, stubborn, terrible at hiding. She closed her eyes. "Wonderful. I disagreed with oversized." Liora stared. Captain Rowan abruptly became fascinated by the window. Gideon took one step toward her. Liora instinctively stiffened. He stopped, the same way his wolf had. "I'm sorry." Her embarrassment disappeared. "For what?" "Not telling you. You couldn't exactly introduce yourself. I could have shifted." "Why didn't you?" Gideon's gaze moved toward the broken collar. "At first I couldn't, and later, I wasn't certain who had put it on me." Liora understood. If you shifted, whoever was searching would know exactly who they had found. "Yes, and you didn't know whether I would turn you over." "No. Yet you slept under my table." That almost smile returned. "I revised my assessment." Something warm moved through Liora's chest, the same impossible recognition she had felt when the collar broke. Gideon's expression changed simultaneously. His eyes sharpened. "You feel that?" It was not a question. Liora took half a step backward. "What?" Gideon did not pursue her. "A resonance. That's not an explanation." Captain Rowan suddenly looked as though he would rather face an army. Liora noticed. "Captain, I believe I should inspect the perimeter. You believe nothing of the sort." Gideon exhaled. "Liora." The way he said her name made the warmth deepen. She disliked that intensely. "What is it?" "Possibly a mate bond." Silence. Liora stared at him, then laughed once. Nobody joined her. "Oh, you're serious." "Yes, no." Gideon's eyebrows lifted. "No? You don't know me." "Correct, I don't know you." "Also correct. You spent one night under my sewing table." "That part I remember. Then we're agreed." "On what?" "Whatever this is, it doesn't mean I trust you." Gideon considered her, then nodded. "Agreed." Liora had prepared herself for argument. His acceptance disarmed her more effectively. "The bond isn't a command," he said. "You're an Alpha King. Apparently everything about you is a command." Pain flickered across his face. Liora immediately regretted the words. Before she could apologize, Gideon said, "That is precisely why I won't make this one." Their eyes met. Something shifted between them. Not love, not surrender. Possibility. The royal physicians discovered 3 residual marks, one beneath Gideon's jaw, one over his collarbone, one at the base of his neck. The chief physician prepared a silver-edged scalpel. Liora caught his wrist. "Don't," he glared. "Release me. Look, the residue must be removed. Look at the lines. There are no lines. There are to me." Everyone went silent. Liora realized what she had admitted. Her mother's warning returned from childhood. Never tell powerful people what you can see. She slowly released the physician. Too late. Gideon was watching her. What do you see? Liora considered lying, then looked at the marks. Thin strands of red-silver light connected them beneath Gideon's skin. Not vein stitches. If he cuts that mark, she said, the other two tighten. The physician scoffed. Based on what? Based on the same thing that let me remove the collar you couldn't. That ended the argument. Gideon looked at the scalpel. Put it away. The physician obeyed. No king's command, just a king's decision. Liora noticed that too. What else? Gideon asked. She approached. May I? He knew what she meant. His throat, the place he still guarded. Gideon's jaw tightened. Then he nodded. Liora raised her fingers. The moment they touched the mark, the world changed. Silver corridors, a young man on his knees, hands fastening restraints around his wrists, someone saying, "Control begins with obedience." Liora gasped. Gideon caught her wrist. The vision vanished. They stared at each other. What did you see? He asked. She could still feel restraints that had never touched her. You. His face became unreadable. When? You were younger. Gideon released her immediately. Liora understood from the speed of it. It was real. Before she could ask, the workshop door opened. A man in a charcoal coat entered without waiting for permission. Perhaps 50. Iron-gray hair. Controlled posture. No visible weapon. He carried authority as though it were another piece of clothing. Captain Rowan stiffened. Chancellor Cassian Vare bowed to Gideon. Majesty, Gideon's entire body changed. Not fear. Armor. Cassian. Relief appeared on the Chancellor's face. Convincing relief. We believed you dead. Someone made an effort. Cassian's gaze moved toward Gideon's throat. Then the broken collar. For half a heartbeat, something disappeared from his expression. Liora saw it. Not surprise, calculation. Then his eyes reached her. The seamstress. Liora already disliked him. Usually. I understand you removed His Majesty's restraint. Collar. Cassian glanced at her. Excuse me? It was around his neck. I call those collars. Terminology matters. So does purpose. Captain Rowan quietly inhaled. Cassian smiled. Not warmly. Then perhaps you understand why the crown accord exists. He faced Gideon. An hour ago, your uncontrolled king's command forced 6 royal guards and a physician to kneel. Liora stiffened. News had traveled quickly. Cassian continued. If that had occurred in a marketplace. The collar residue triggered it, Liora said. His eyes returned to her. Perhaps. It did. You are a seamstress, and yet here we are. Gideon looked down. Liora wondered whether kings were allowed to laugh at chancellors. Cassian did not. The problem remains, he said. No individual should possess power capable of overriding another person's will without a safeguard. Liora expected Gideon to dismiss him. He did not, because Cassian was not entirely wrong. That made him more dangerous. The Accord places enchanted restraint authority under council oversight, Cassian continued. No alpha, including the king, would stand beyond accountability. Gideon's voice cooled by giving the council authority to collar them. Under extraordinary circumstances, I've learned to distrust that phrase. Cassian's gaze dropped briefly to the scars around Gideon's throat. Your experience is precisely why safeguards require regulation rather than secrecy. For the first time, Liora understood why people followed him. He was not arguing for cruelty. He had found a frightening problem and selected a frightening solution. A bell sounded outside. 2 days until the Crown Accord vote. Cassian turned toward Liora. You'll accompany us to the palace. No. The answer escaped before she considered diplomacy. Cassian blinked. Your expertise is required. Then ask. His expression hardened. Liora Vale, the security of Alaris. Chancellor. Gideon's voice stopped him. Not King's command. Something quieter. Cassian turned. Gideon looked at Liora. "Where do you want to go?" She stared. The palace held answers. The collar, her mother's scissors. The strange power she had hidden all her life. It also held people like Cassian. "My workshop. Then you remain here." Cassian's disbelief was almost impressive. "Majesty, she possesses information vital to—" "Then we bring the investigation here." "You would reorganize royal security around a seamstress?" Gideon's eyes turned cold. "No." He glanced toward Liora. "I would refuse to imprison someone because she helped me." Cassian said nothing. Liora did. "I'll come tomorrow." Both men looked at her. She folded her arms. "I said I wanted to stay here. I didn't say I wouldn't investigate." Gideon nodded. "Tomorrow." Cassian smiled again. This time Liora knew not to trust it. After sunset, Captain Rowan brought the recovered evidence from the place where Gideon had been attacked. No second collar, no weapon, only torn cloth and a piece of silver mechanism. Gideon turned it over. "I remember the ambush." Liora waited, 6 men, masked. I shifted. His hand tightened. Then something struck my throat. "The collar?" "No." He looked at her. "That's what I couldn't understand." Liora leaned closer. Gideon continued. "There was nothing around my neck." His voice lowered. Then the silver closed itself. Leora's skin prickled. Not locked. Closed. She remembered the glowing seam, the loops, the tension. Her mother's scissors finding something ordinary. Blades could not. A stitch. She picked up the silver fragment. Thread sight flickered. A faint line extended from the fragment, through the workshop wall, toward the palace. Liora nearly dropped it. "What?" She looked at Gideon. "This wasn't made as one object." "Meaning?" "I don't know yet." That was when Captain Rowan removed his glove. Liora saw a pale silver mark around his wrist. She froze. "Where did you get that?" Rowan looked down. "This?" A narrow geometric line encircled his skin. Standard council protection mark. Senior security officers received them last month. Liora stared. She had seen similar marks that morning, on 2 guards, and on the physician's assistant. Her stomach tightened. How many people have those at the palace? Rowan thought. Hundreds. The silver fragment in Leora's hand pulsed. Rowan's wrist answered. Once. Red, then silver. Gideon saw it. What does that mean? Liora looked toward the distant palace. The Crown Accord would gather every major pack leader in Alaris beneath one roof. 2 days. Hundreds of enchanted marks. And somewhere inside Gideon, 3 pieces of the collar remained. I don't think your collar was only made to hold you. Gideon's expression darkened. What was it made for? Liora watched the line of invisible light stretching toward the palace. I think it was made to connect you to something. Outside, the crown bells began ringing again, and beneath Captain Rowan's skin, the silver mark pulsed in time with the residue around his king's throat. The Crown Accord chamber contained 412 enchanted marks. Liora counted them twice, silver circles around wrists, thin geometric lines beneath collars, small protective sigils hidden behind ears. Council guards wore them. Royal officials wore them. Pack representatives wore them. Even several servants carrying water through the galleries had been marked, and every single one was connected to Gideon. Liora stood at the entrance to the great chamber with her mother's scissors hidden in her sleeve. You're shaking. She looked at Gideon. So are you. His hand immediately stopped. Liora almost smiled. The 3 residual silverbind marks around his throat were hidden beneath the high collar of his black ceremonial coat. She could still see them. Threadsight had grown stronger overnight. That was not entirely good. Yesterday she needed concentration to see magical seams. Today they appeared whenever she looked too closely. Thin silver-red lines crossed the chamber like spider silk. All of them eventually disappeared toward Gideon. I can still send you home, he said. Behind them stood the last open door, the last safe exit. Liora looked at it. Her workshop was less than an hour away. Her sewing table, rosemary drying beside the window, half-finished gowns, a life where the most dangerous thing she usually handled was an impatient noblewoman with unrealistic measurements. She wanted it. Then Captain Rowan passed them. The mark around his wrist flashed. He flinched. Leora's decision settled. No. Gideon's jaw tightened. No, you're not sending me home. I understood. Your face disagrees. My face has been accused of many things, mostly by me. Recently. The warmth between them flickered. Mate resonance, still unexplained. Still inconvenient. Liora ignored it. If this goes wrong, you leave. No. Gideon looked at her. If this goes wrong, you don't use King's command. His expression changed. Liora, the curse reacts to it. And if people are dying? She had no easy answer. Then we decide based on what is happening, not what we're afraid might happen. Gideon looked toward the chamber. Pack alphas filled the lower circle. Hundreds of shifters, hundreds of marks. That's a great deal of trust you're asking for. No, Liora met his eyes. I'm asking you not to confuse control with safety. Something passed through his expression. Then he nodded. All right. The bells rang. Crown Accord began. Chancellor Cassian Vare opened the assembly. He spoke beautifully. Liora hated that. The Crown Accord does not weaken our king, Cassian told the chamber. It protects the institution he represents. Pack leaders listened, some approvingly, others with open suspicion. No ruler should fear accountability, Cassian continued. No citizen should live at the mercy of supernatural authority without lawful protection. Liora glanced at Gideon. He did not react, because again, Cassian was saying something partly true. King's command could override another shifter's will. Gideon had done it accidentally inside her workshop. That power needed limits. The question was whether a collar was a limit, or simply another person holding the leash. Cassian lifted a document. The Accord authorizes council-supervised restraints only when an alpha presents an immediate threat. Murmurs spread. Gideon stepped forward. And who determines immediate threat? The council, before or after the accused is restrained. Cassian's eyes hardened. Majesty, surely you don't object to temporary measures designed to prevent loss of life. I object to calling coercion temporary, because the person applying it promises to stop. The chamber quieted. Leora's mother's scissors warmed against her wrist. A silver line appeared near Cassian's hand. She narrowed her eyes. It disappeared. Liora, Gideon had noticed. Nothing. It was a lie. She hated lying to him, but she needed certainty. Cassian continued speaking. Liora stopped listening. Instead, she watched the marks. They did not behave like separate enchantments. When one brightened, another answered. Then another. Patterns. Tension. A seam. Her seamstress instincts woke. One stitch pulled the next transferred force. A garment could appear to contain 1,000 independent stitches, but pull the correct thread, and an entire seam opened. Leora's pulse quickened. She followed one invisible line from Rowan's wrist. It crossed the chamber, touched another guard, then a pack representative, then vanished. She could not find the connection, not yet. A vote clerk stepped forward. Representatives will prepare. Gideon suddenly gasped. Liora turned. His hand went to his throat. Red silver light appeared beneath his collar. Gideon? His eyes flashed. Across the chamber, Rowan cried out. The mark around his wrist ignited. Then another, and another. 412 silverbind marks awakened. Screaming began. People collapsed. Some clawed at their wrists. Others tore at their collars. A young pack representative shifted halfway before the mark around his throat tightened, trapping his body between forms. Liora ran toward him. "Don't pull it!" he screamed. "Get it off! It's not on your skin!" He stared at her. "What?" The silver line was deeper. Not metal. Magic had stitched itself through his shifting instinct. Liora reached for her scissors. A hand caught her arm. "Council security, Miss Vale. Move to the protected gallery. No Chancellor's order. She looked toward Cassian. He stood on the central platform, unaffected. Of course. Cassian. His gaze found hers. No surprise. That was all she needed. You did this. The Chancellor's expression remained controlled. I activated emergency safeguards. People screamed around him. You activated them before anyone became a threat. His Majesty's instability has reached dangerous levels. Liora turned. Gideon was on his knees. The marks around his throat burned. His pupils flickered between gray and silver. King's command gathered around him. Not intentionally. The network was pulling it out. Cassian raised his voice. Observe your king. Pack leaders turned. His power is destabilizing every restraint in this chamber. Liora understood the trick. Cassian ignored her. This is why no alpha can stand above accountability. Gideon isn't destabilizing them. Cassian's gaze snapped toward her. Liora pointed at the marks. They're destabilizing him. Murmurs spread. Cassian's face hardened. Remove her. 2 guards approached. Gideon saw them. Power exploded. Every window shook. The guards stopped. Liora. His voice carried something beneath it. King's command. She felt the impulse immediately. Come here. Not spoken. Instinctive. Protective. The marks around the chamber blazed brighter. People screamed. Gideon. His face twisted. He shut his mouth. The command disappeared. Immediately, the network dimmed. Liora stared at Cassian. You knew. He said nothing. You built it to feed on King's command. Cassian descended from the platform. I built nothing, but you activated it. I activated safeguards because the king has demonstrated instability, by forcing him into instability. His composure cracked, only slightly. Do you know what unchecked alpha power does? The chamber faded from his attention. For one moment, Liora saw the man beneath the Chancellor. My brother died in Eastmere, he said. An alpha lost control. 37 people died before anyone could stop him. Leora's anger did not disappear. That would have been easier. I am sorry. Cassian's jaw tightened. Then understand. I understand being afraid of what someone powerful might do. She looked around at hundreds of people writhing beneath enchanted marks. But you've hurt them for something Gideon might do. They will recover. A woman screamed from the gallery. Liora looked toward her. A child was trying to pull a burning silver mark from his mother's wrist. Cassian looked too. Something moved in his face. Regret. Then he chose. Proceed with containment. That was the line. Liora saw him cross it. Council guards seized pack representatives. Hold the king, Cassian ordered. 4 enchanted chains appeared. Gideon backed away, his face drained of color. No, Liora heard it. Not Alpha King, the young man from her vision. Control begins with obedience. Gideon. He looked at her. Look at me. The chains came closer. King's command gathered again. Don't give him what he wants. I can stop them. And activate every mark. A chain snapped around Gideon's wrist. He roared. Half the chamber collapsed. Liora, I know. She reached for threadsight. Silver lines exploded across her vision. Too many. Hundreds. She tried to isolate Rowan's mark. Failed. Another. Failed. Each time she followed a seam, it split into dozens more. There was no beginning. No end. Her mother's scissors heated. Liora cut one visible strand. Pain tore through her throat. The strand immediately repaired itself. No. She tried another. Same result. Cassian saw. Relief entered his face. You cannot undo it. Liora cut again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. Her hands began shaking. She had been wrong. Hundreds of marks. Hundreds of bindings. She could not cut them all. Gideon cried out. A second chain locked around him. Silver spread toward his throat. Leora's confidence collapsed. This was the moment she should run. She had tried. She was a seamstress standing inside a war of royal magic. Cassian had an entire council. Gideon had King's command. She had tiny scissors, Liora. Gideon's voice reached her. Not command, trust. He was looking at her, even now, waiting. She looked down at the severed strand. It had repaired itself. Why? A normal seam could be cut anywhere. But a locked stitch? No. Liora stopped. Her breathing slowed. She looked at the room differently. Not enchantments. Construction. Cassian had said he built nothing. Perhaps that was true. Whoever created this had not forged hundreds of individual restraints. That would require hundreds of anchors, hundreds of power sources, hundreds of... Liora looked at Gideon. One anchor. Her stomach dropped. Oh, Cassian heard. What? Liora ignored him. She looked between Rowan and the nearest marked guard. Empty air. Nothing visible. She lifted her mother's scissors. A faint silver line appeared. Cassian's expression changed. What are you doing? Liora moved the scissors sideways. Another line, then another. The chamber transformed. 412 marks became points on a single glowing structure. A web. No, not a web. She knew this pattern. Liora had sewn it every week since she was 12. A continuous locking stitch. Her eyes filled with silver light. Cassian stepped toward her. Stop. Now she looked at him. For the first time, fear entered his face. Liora almost smiled. You didn't forge 100 collars. Cassian stopped. Silence spread outward. Liora opened the scissors. You stitched one. She cut empty air. Snip. Nothing happened. For one heartbeat, Cassian smiled. Then Rowan's wrist mark opened. Not broke. Opened. Like thread pulled from cloth. The silver line raced around the chamber. One mark unraveled. Then 10, 50, 100. Cassian turned. No silver light ripped through the galleries. Every restraint began unmaking itself. No! Cassian lunged toward Liora. Captain Rowan intercepted him. The Chancellor struggled. You don't understand what she's doing. Liora did. Too late. The entire enchantment had been one binding, and she had placed herself at its severed end. The first sensory imprint hit her, a collar tightening. Liora gasped, then another, chains around wrists, another, a command forcing knees to stone, another, panic, another, choking, hundreds. Every restraint released its stored pain into the person who had opened the seam. Liora dropped the scissors. Her hands flew to her throat. Nothing was there. She could feel metal anyway. Gideon tore free as his chains unraveled. He ran toward her. She tried to breathe. Couldn't. 400 frightened bodies poured through her nervous system. Don't touch me! Gideon stopped, immediately. Even now. Even while she collapsed, he remained one step away because she had told him to. Cassian stared at her. Then at the unraveling marks, his face emptied. What are you? Liora could barely hear him. Captain Rowan answered. No. An elderly pack representative had picked up Liora's scissors. He stared at the tiny symbol engraved near the hinge, a needle crossing a broken silver circle. His hands began trembling. I know this mark. Cassian went pale. The old man looked at Liora. Silverbind cutter. No, Cassian whispered. The last restraint opened. The chamber became silent. No callers, no commands, no one kneeling. Cassian looked around as though history itself had betrayed him. They're extinct. Liora fell. Gideon caught himself before reaching for her. His hands hovered uselessly. Liora. She could not answer. Her voice was gone. May I? The question almost broke her. She nodded. Only then did Gideon catch her. His arms closed around her carefully. The mate bond flared, not enough to stop the pain, enough to let her know where she was. Gideon. Crown chamber now. Not 100 prisons. One room. One person holding her. Cassian was dragged away, shouting that they would regret destroying the only safeguard against alpha tyranny. Perhaps someday they would debate whether part of his warning had been right. Not today. Today, children were crying. Shifters were helping one another stand. Captain Rowan's wrist was bare, and Alpha King Gideon Rourke possessed enough power to command nearly every wolf in the chamber. yet he knelt on the floor, asking a seamstress's permission before touching her. Liora tried to tell him she could not breathe. No sound came. Gideon's face changed. Liora? Her hands clawed at an invisible collar. There was nothing around her throat, but she could feel every inch of silver. The network was gone. The prisoners were free. Gideon was free. Cassian had lost. And as darkness closed over Liora, she understood the price of cutting the kingdom's seam. The collar had not disappeared. It had simply found a new place to live, inside her. Liora woke screaming because someone was tightening a collar around her throat. Her hands flew upward. No silver, no chain, no hands, nothing. Still, she could not breathe. She tore at her own skin until someone caught her wrists. Liora. Gideon. She opened her eyes. The royal recovery room returned slowly. Morning light, white curtains, a chair beside the bed. Gideon immediately released her. He looked as though he had not slept. "There's nothing there," he said. Liora tried to answer. No sound came. Panic sharpened. She touched her throat. Gideon's face tightened. "Your voice will return." She glared at him. "You may glare." The physician said the same thing. Liora reached for the writing board beside the bed. Her hand shook as she wrote. "How long?" "They don't know." She stared at him, which is why I didn't begin with that part. Liora wrote again. Cassian? Confined. Accord? Suspended. She hesitated. People? Gideon's expression softened, alive. Her shoulders dropped. Some injuries, no deaths. Only then did Liora allow herself to close her eyes. Gideon noticed. Of course he did. You asked about everyone else first. She opened her eyes. He sounded almost angry. Liora wrote, "They were hurt because I cut it." No. His answer came hard enough that Alpha Authority brushed the room. Liora flinched. Gideon stopped. The pressure disappeared. His face changed. "I'm sorry." She looked away. Liora, she did not turn. "I won't do that again." Her throat tightened with a collar that did not exist. Gideon remained in the chair. He did not ask her to forgive him. That helped more than an apology. She returned to Grayhaven 2 days later. Everyone called her a hero. Liora discovered she hated the word. Heroes were expected to feel victorious. Liora could not wear a high-necked dress without vomiting. She could not tolerate necklaces. She could not sleep beneath heavy blankets because the weight near her collarbone woke her gasping. Sometimes her voice worked. Sometimes she opened her mouth and nothing emerged. Worst of all, thread sight had changed. Before the crown accord, Liora had needed to concentrate. Now she saw seams everywhere, protective wards around windows, old enchantments woven into family rings, security marks on guards. Every magical binding looked like a thread waiting for her scissors, and every thread whispered pain. So Liora did what she had always done when something was damaged. She tried to fix it, alone. She locked the workshop, placed her mother's scissors on the sewing table, then looked inward. If thread sight could find the collar inside Gideon, perhaps it could find the imprint inside her. Silver appeared. Thousands of threads wrapped around her chest, her throat, her spine. Liora gasped. There! Her voice worked today. Barely. She raised the scissors, found the tightest strand. Cut pain detonated through her body. Liora fell from the chair. The scissors struck the floor. Every invisible thread tightened simultaneously. She could not inhale, could not scream, could not move. The workshop door crashed open. Gideon entered. He saw her, stopped. Every instinct in his face told him to cross the room. He didn't. Liora. She clawed at her throat. "May I touch you?" She could not answer. He looked at the scissors, then at her hand. Gideon lowered himself several feet away. One finger for yes. Liora forced her index finger against the floor. Once, he moved, slowly, even now. His hand supported her shoulders. "Look at me," No King's command. Just Gideon. You're in the workshop. She fought for air. Your sewing table is behind me. Another breath. Rosemary by the window. Another. My coat is dripping on your floor. Despite everything, anger flickered through her. His mouth almost smiled. There you are. The invisible collar loosened. Liora breathed. Then she began crying. She hated that most. I can't fix it. Gideon said nothing. I fixed yours. Her voice cracked. I cut 400 marks. I can see every enchantment in this city, and I can't fix myself. You don't have to. Liora shoved against him. He released her immediately. Don't. Her breathing broke again. Don't tell me I don't have to. Gideon remained where she had pushed him. Liora stood unsteadily. What am I supposed to do now? Recover? And if I don't? He frowned. If my voice doesn't come back? If I can't use thread sight without collapsing? If I can't cut another binding? Liora, what am I then? Silence. She regretted the question the moment it existed, because now Gideon understood. His expression changed. Is that what you think? Liora looked away. People came to me because I could make things. Yes? Nobles remembered my name when they needed a dress repaired. Yes, you found me because you needed the collar removed. Gideon's face hardened. And after that? She said nothing. After the collar fell, I could leave. Her eyes moved toward the sewing table. Gideon followed her gaze. I stayed. Mate bond. No. The answer was immediate. The bond existed. It didn't crawl under your table. Despite herself, she looked at him. Gideon's voice softened. You opened the back door, Liora remembered. Go. I chose the table. Something painful moved through her chest. Not Silverbind, something older. What if I have nothing useful left? Gideon held her gaze. Then I suppose I'll finally have a chance to be useful to you. He left before sunset because Liora asked for space. She hated how empty the workshop felt afterward. The following morning, she opened her mother's wooden box. The silver thread inside was still warm. Beneath it lay a false bottom Liora had never noticed. Thread sight showed the seam instantly. She almost laughed. Of course, she opened it. Inside was a folded piece of linen and a tiny metal plaque, the same symbol engraved on her scissors. Needle broken silver circle, and one name. Liora Vale, Silverbind Cutter. Liora looked toward the old tapestry. The woman pictured there had her hair. Not exactly, but enough. For years Liora had believed the tapestry depicted an ancient seamstress freeing a wolf from a trap. Now she saw the details. The scissors, the silver circle, and behind the woman, a man holding one end of a shining thread, not restraining her, sharing it. Liora unfolded the linen. Instructions had been embroidered into it, not written, stitched. Her mother had known exactly who would eventually read them. Liora traced the first line. A binding cut is not a binding erased. The second. Pain remembers its path. Then, never carry the severed thread alone. Liora's pulse accelerated. The final diagram showed two figures connected by silver thread, one cutter, one anchor, not prisoner and captor, two open hands, consent symbols. Liora sat very still. The anchor could receive part of the sensory imprint, but only voluntarily, and the transferred binding would seek the anchor's strongest supernatural channel. For Gideon, King's command. Her stomach dropped. No, someone knocked. She knew who it was. Gideon? Yes. Liora opened the door. He took one look at her face. What happened? She handed him the embroidered linen. He read. Once, then again. No. Liora blinked. That's my line. Find another anchor. The instructions say the anchor must already share resonance with the cutter, the mate bond. Gideon looked at the cloth. So me. If we do this, the residue could damage King's command. Good. Liora stared at him. That isn't funny. I wasn't joking. You are king. An observation people insist on repeating. You need your power. I need judgment more. Gideon. He looked at her. Do you know what Cassian got right? She became quiet. Power like mine requires accountability. His voice lowered. He was wrong to make coercion the answer. But he was not wrong that no king should possess unquestioned access to other people's wills. You've used king's command to save lives, and I may still be able to. May, the transfer could weaken it, or destroy it. Yes. Liora shook her head. No, Gideon did not argue. That irritated her. You can't just agree. You said no. I mean, she stopped. Gideon waited. Liora almost laughed at the absurdity. Even now, what do you want? She asked. To help you. Why? His expression changed. She expected mate bond, duty, gratitude. Instead, he said, because when I was beneath your table, I had nothing you should have wanted. Leora's throat tightened. I couldn't protect you. I couldn't rule. I couldn't even let a physician touch me. He stepped no closer, and you stayed. Gideon, you keep asking what you'll be if you cannot be useful. His steel-gray eyes held hers. Liora, you were the first person who taught me that question was wrong. Silence filled the workshop. The collar around her throat appeared again, invisible, tightening. Liora shut her eyes. She could keep carrying it. Alone, useful, independent, slowly breaking. Her old strategy had brought her as far as it could. She opened her eyes. If we try this, I make the rules. All of them. If I say stop, we stop. If you feel King's command changing, I tell you. You don't hide it to protect me. I won't. And no heroics. Gideon raised an eyebrow. That rule feels targeted. It is. His mouth curved. Leora's did too. Sit down. He obeyed. They sat opposite each other beneath the tapestry, the silver thread stretched between their open palms. Liora held her mother's scissors. Ready? No, Gideon said. She looked at him. Good answer. Learned from a seamstress. Liora activated thread sight. The world turned silver. The sensory imprint inside her rose. Hundreds of restraints. Hundreds of moments of fear. Her breath caught. Gideon opened his hand. Your choice. Liora placed the silver thread across his palm. The mate bond ignited. She cut. Pain moved. Gideon roared. King's command exploded through the workshop. Windows shook. Leora's knees nearly folded. Then Gideon clenched his jaw and forced the power inward. The invisible collar around Liora loosened. For the first time since Crown Accord, she took a full breath. Gideon collapsed forward. Gideon! She caught him. His eyes opened. Gray human, present. Command something, Liora whispered. He looked toward a candle. Extinguish. Nothing happened. His face went still. Leora's stomach dropped. No. He tried again. A faint pressure moved through the room. The flame flickered. That was all. Gideon. He looked at her and smiled. Actually smiled. You can breathe. Her eyes filled. You lost it. Not all. Most of it. Probably. You idiot. That sounds remarkably like your voice. Liora froze. Her voice, clear, strong, entirely hers. She laughed, then cried again. Gideon lifted one hand, stopped before touching her cheek. Liora looked at it, then at him. Yes. His fingers touched her. No collar appeared. No panic. Only warmth. The mate bond moved between them. Still not a command. Still not love by itself. But love had been building around it in hundreds of smaller choices. Liora leaned forward. This time she did not wait for destiny. She kissed him because she wanted to. Gideon went perfectly still. She pulled back slightly. Problem? I was attempting not to make assumptions. Liora almost laughed. You may kiss me back. His hand settled gently behind her head. That is the clearest royal instruction I've received all week. Then Gideon kissed her. Later, Liora rested beneath the old tapestry with her head against his shoulder. The invisible collar had not disappeared completely. She could still feel its ghost. but it no longer belonged only to her. For most of her life, Liora had believed being needed was the safest way to keep someone beside her. Now, the most powerful man in Aloris had given up part of the very power that made him king, not because she had repaired him, not because a mate bond demanded it, and not because she had anything left to prove. He had simply been offered the choice to share her burden, and he had chosen yes. 6 weeks after the Crown Accord collapsed, Liora Vale received an official letter offering her the position of Royal Silverbind Master. She used it to catch spilled tea. Gideon discovered this 20 minutes later. He stood inside her workshop, holding the stained document by one corner. "This bears the royal seal," I noticed. "You put a teacup on it." The table was uneven. The council spent 4 days negotiating that title. Then they've learned a valuable lesson about efficient government. Gideon stared at her. Liora continued stitching a dark green coat. Finally, his mouth curved. "I told them you would refuse. Then why send it? They don't listen to me." Liora looked pointedly at him. "Perhaps you should command them." Silence. Then they both laughed. It was easier to joke about King's command now, not because losing most of it had been insignificant. Gideon could still project alpha authority when threatened, but the supernatural force that once brought rooms to their knees had faded to a shadow. Some members of the Royal Council considered that dangerous. Others considered it convenient. Gideon considered it an opportunity. 3 days earlier, he had signed the Free Will Statute. No ruler, council, Pack Alpha, or Crown officer could legally use supernatural compulsion to obtain political agreement, testimony, mating consent, or personal submission. King's command itself would be subject to independent review whenever used against a citizen. Cassian Vare had wanted accountability. In the end, Gideon gave Aloris accountability without collars. Cassian would not see it happen. The former chancellor had been convicted for activating Silverbind marks against civilians and attempting to engineer the king's loss of control. He would spend the rest of his life without public office, but during the investigation, Captain Rowan had found something troubling. Cassian had commissioned the network. He had not forged it. Every recovered fragment carried the same maker's mark, a silver hand. The Argent Forge. Someone outside the council still knew how to create silver-binded restraints. Liora had stared at the mark for a long time, then closed the evidence box. Tomorrow could have its monsters. Today she had dresses to finish. The council's second offer was better, not a royal position. Funding. Liora accepted under conditions. The building belonged to her. The Crown possessed no authority over her clients. No person could be compelled to undergo threadsite examination, and Liora alone decided which bindings she would remove. Gideon read the conditions. Anything else? Yes. She handed him another page. He read the final requirement, then looked at her. "You want the Crown to fund apprenticeships?" Silverbind cutters disappeared because people with power either feared them or tried to own them. Liora returned to her sewing. "I'm not becoming the last one." Gideon's expression softened. Done. So the workshop gained another room, then another. People began arriving from across Aloris carrying enchanted objects they had once believed impossible to remove. Pack brands, compulsion rings, old military bindings. Not every enchantment was evil. Not every binding was coercive. That distinction mattered. Liora taught her apprentices the first rule, before she taught them how to see a magical seam. Never cut merely because you can. The second rule was simpler. Ask. Healing was less dramatic. Liora disliked that too. There was no morning when she woke and discovered the invisible collar completely gone. Some days she wore ordinary high collars without thinking. Other days even a loose scarf felt unbearable. Her voice returned fully. Threadsight remained, but she stopped using it on everything she saw. That was harder than expected. For most of her life, Liora had looked at damaged things and immediately wondered how she could repair them. Now she practiced another question. Did anyone ask me to? Sometimes the answer was no, and the world continued turning. People still visited when they did not need anything. Mira from the bakery brought cakes. Captain Rowan came to complain about palace uniforms. Gideon came far too often for a man allegedly governing a kingdom. One afternoon, Liora finally asked him, "Don't you have a palace?" "Yes." "A throne?" "Unfortunately. A kingdom?" "So I'm told." "Then why are you reorganizing my thread?" Gideon looked down at the drawer. "I was helping. You've arranged it by color. That seemed logical. It's arranged by weight." He stared at approximately 40 spools. Liora pointed toward the door. "Kingdom. Go." He went. He returned that evening with dinner, not because she needed him. That distinction slowly became everything. Winter arrived early. One evening, snow began falling over Grayhaven. Liora was alone in the workshop finishing a child's coat when she heard scratching at the back door. Her hand stopped. Not knocking, scratching. For one heartbeat, memory returned. Rain blood, a giant black wolf, silver burning around his throat. Liora stood. The old fear was gone. Something warmer had taken its place. She opened the door. A massive black wolf sat outside, steel-gray eyes, snow across his fur. No collar, no blood, no wound. Liora leaned against the doorway. "You know kings usually knock." Gideon's ears moved. Convenient excuse. She stepped aside. "Come in." He entered, then immediately crossed toward the sewing table. Liora watched. Gideon lowered himself, crawled beneath it, and placed his enormous head on his paws, exactly where he had slept the first night. Liora stared at him. "You cannot possibly still fit." One gray eye opened. "You are larger than the table." The eye closed. Liora smiled. She returned to work. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. Needle through cloth, snow against glass, the quiet breathing of a black wolf beneath her table. No emergency, no curse, no kingdom requiring rescue. Eventually, Liora put down the coat. "Why there?" Gideon's eyes opened. He crawled out and shifted behind the familiar folding screen. When he emerged, he pulled on his shirt and sat on the floor beside her chair. "You really want to know?" "Yes." He looked beneath the table. "The first night I was here, I thought the collar was the reason I stayed." Liora listened. "Then I thought it was the mate bond. And now?" Gideon's gaze returned to hers. "Now I know better." He reached toward her hand, stopped. Liora turned her palm upward, their fingers intertwined. "It was the first place I remember being allowed to be afraid. Without someone deciding, my fear meant I needed to be controlled." Leora's throat tightened. "Not from Silverbind." "Everyone else saw the Alpha King," Gideon continued. "You saw an injured wolf. I also called you oversized. You were wrong. I own mirrors." He smiled. Then his expression softened. "You didn't know what I could give you. You didn't even know my name." His thumb moved gently across her fingers. "And you stayed." Liora looked beneath the sewing table. For years, she had believed people stayed because she repaired what they needed. A torn sleeve, a damaged dress, a cursed collar. If she remained useful, perhaps she would remain wanted. But Gideon had been free when he crawled beneath that table. The back door had been open. He had chosen to stay, and now he had returned with no collar at all. Liora leaned against him. Gideon kissed her hair. No destiny ordered either of them to remain there. The mate bond could explain recognition. It could not explain trust. That had been built differently, one choice at a time. Months later, the broken silver collar was melted down. Liora refused every suggestion that it be displayed in the palace. Instead, she had the silver purified until no trace of Silverbind enchantment remained. Then a metalsmith made something new, a small box. Liora placed her mother's scissors inside. The object that had once existed to close around a living throat now protected the tool used to open bindings. She liked that better than a monument. On the lid, she engraved 2 open hands. No chains, no crown, no wolf kneeling. Choice offered, choice received. The Argent Forge remained somewhere beyond Alaris. Perhaps one day it would matter. But that was another road. This one ended in a warm workshop while snow covered Grayhaven. Liora sewed beside the fire. Gideon slept beneath the table in wolf form, not because he was wounded, not because she could heal him, not because she was useful, because he wanted to be there. And Liora finally understood that being needed and being chosen were not the same thing. She preferred being chosen. Every time. And now I want to know what you think. Cassian was wrong to torture innocent people and use silver-bind collars as instruments of control. But was he completely wrong about the underlying problem? Should a supernatural Alpha King with the power to override another person's will be subject to special safeguards? Or does creating a weapon capable of controlling him inevitably create something even more dangerous? Tell me which side you're on in the comments. And if Liora and Gideon's story stayed with you, like, share, and subscribe for more emotional werewolf romances, where mate bonds may bring two people together, but their choices decide whether they deserve to stay. May God bless you and your family with peace in your home, health in your bodies, happiness in your hearts, safety wherever life takes you, strength through every difficult season, love that never demands you surrender who you are, and hope for every new morning.